right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode number 4 of the Countout podcast, our 1-month anniversary show. Justin, how are you doing this evening?
Fine, yourself?
Great, I am your host, Jason Shoveltowski, and I'm along with my co-host here, Justin Williams. Tonight, we are going to do something a little different. We're going to preview the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. We're going to have our predictions and our thoughts, and maybe we'll make a little game out of it. Maybe the winner of who gets the most picks right will get to pick next week's main topic. We'll see.
Yes.
Just before we get into our main event this evening, let's go ahead and I'll pimp ourselves out yet again. We are on Facebook at facebook.com/thecountoutpodcast. We are on iTunes, so if you go to the iTunes store and search for the Countout Podcast, we will be the first result that comes up. We are on Podomatic. If you go to the countoutpodcast.podomatic.com, you can check us out there. We are on YouTube. If you search for the Countout Podcast, we are the first result that comes up. And lastly, we are on Twitter, so you can tweet us at the Countout Podcast.
At Countout Podcast.
At Countout Podcast. I am not good with this social media mumbo-jumbo. But anyways, Justin, let's just get right into it. Tonight we've got a busy episode. Let's take a look at the week that was in professional wrestling. The first headline that I want to talk about this week is something that we touched on last week.
Yes, sir.
We talked about Global Force Wrestling and their future and how they should come up with some partnership, possibly with Japan, with someone.
That's
and
correct.
Wouldn't you know it, this week Jeff Jarrett announces Global Force Wrestling has partnered with New Japan. Justin, being you're kind of the overseas wrestling expert, why don't you give us your opinion on that?
New Japan Pro Wrestling, Inoki's baby that he's had forever. Great partnership for Jeff Jarrett. You're going to see, he's already partnered with AAA in Mexico. So you're going to see a lot of cross-promotional matches with them. You're going to see a lot of stars that have been over here but have kind of been shunned by everybody else. A lot of people that you haven't seen. Like I mentioned in past podcasts before, you'll get Bullet Club coming over here, which is the predominant heel faction that's going on in New Japan right now. And you'll also get other stars like Tanahashi, who basically is the John Cena of Japan.
And you also have AJ Styles, who's the IWGP Heavyweight Champion as well, who obviously has history with Jeff Jarrett, working with him in TNA, of course.
Correct, and he's also the leader of Bullet Club currently, who took over for Prince Devitt, who actually signed with WWE. So,
and then if I'm not mistaken, isn't the Bullet Club, they're currently the IWGP Tag Team Champions,
That is correct as well.
So you're going to get a mix, I think, of some American talent that's wrestling in Japan, and you're going to get a mix of that international flavor as well. And Jarrett also did hint in regards to show dates and TV deals. He said it wasn't anything he can get into at this time, but there was more news to come. So I'm really excited, almost prophetic in a way.
Yep.
We were talking last week about partnerships, and we'll get into another one here shortly. But I think it's a good move for Global Force, and I really hope that they get a TV deal going, start getting some show dates booked, and giving us a taste of what it is that they plan to do.
Yeah, and I kind of want to see if they go old school with it, you know. I was listening to some JR podcast that he does, and he was talking about how you don't need a promo right away at the beginning of a show. I'm curious if Jarrett will just start off with wrestling right away. So yeah, I'm excited to see what their product's going to bring.
Another headline, Josh Matthews released from WWE. Josh Matthews has been an announcer. He's been involved in WWE since 2001, 2002, when he participated in the Tough Enough series. He lost, but ended up picking up a role as an announcer. Honestly, a lot of people are like, who?
Yeah.
I mean, okay announcer, didn't really add anything. I mean, not knocking the guy, but I don't see what he added to broadcasts. I think he's probably best known for his nosebleed that he had on a live episode of SmackDown. But no, and there was also news that he was backstage at the Hammerstein Ballroom TNA tapings this week. I honestly think, even though that I don't like his announcing or his style, I think TNA would be a good move for him. I mean, he is...
Anybody's better than Mike Tenay.
I agree. He is a mid-level, announcer. He can work with backstage promos. So I think that TNA, if that's where he goes, obviously he can't go there now. He's just backstage visiting. Most WWE wrestlers have a 90-day no-compete clause, and I would guess announcing would be competing.
Yeah, I would assume that if he does get picked up by TNA, they'd have him backstage knowing the works and stuff, but he could not appear on television for 3 months.
Right.
That 90-day clause. So I do find it interesting. I think that TNA's announced team is lacking, like we've said before. I like Taz, but, I mean, it's so scripted. It's worse than WWE, at least.
And I think that goes back to how we talked to where they seem to tape a month's worth of episodes at a time.
Yep.
There isn't that live feel. And actually, I was reading that TNA and Taz weren't even broadcasting at the tapings that they had this week. They're actually just going to go in and
look over it
and tape their commentary, which I think is ridiculous. It doesn't give it that live feel, that spontaneous feeling.
And I know we've talked about that before, but I mean, if they did a show like the E used to do, where it's show Wednesday and then comes out Friday, or Tuesday, like SmackDown does, comes out Friday, it's still taped and it's still live, and they're doing commentary live too.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't understand why they can't do that. Is it just because Taz and TNA don't want to travel to, like, New York or what?
In my opinion, and we'll get, we had discussed last week a little bit, and you and I had discussed personally about doing a podcast where we discuss things we miss in wrestling. Mm-hmm. But I think every wrestling program should be live. I don't know why it isn't. I think if you had TNA, Raw, and SmackDown all live, I think the ratings would jump. Maybe not significantly, but I mean, like I said, I'm from that era, where initially 80s Hogan run, everything was taped all the time, pre-internet.
Yeah.
Then you go to the Monday Night War, which is still, internet in its infancy. Nitro was live all the time, and it forced Raw to go live every week. I love live TV. I don't want to go online. I'm one of those guys where if there's a result online, I'm going to go read it. I can't resist and watch it later, because you're going to hear about it either through a Twitter feed, a Facebook feed from someone anyway.
Well, to go back to that point too, like Bischoff spoiling Mick Foley's title on Nitro basically made the WWE go live to prevent spoilers from happening like that.
Well, he did that on so many different occasions, revealing results and everything. So, I mean, why not go live? Get that spontaneity, spontaneity
there you go.
Back into wrestling.
Yep.
I said a couple episodes ago, I think episode 2, we're never going to talk about TNA unless they do anything interesting. And like I said last week, I'll never say anything like that again, because I actually have a couple of TNA topics. They seem to come up every time we're discussing something. But 2 points that I wanted to bring up. Number 1, they jumped back to the 6-sided ring. Mm-hmm. And number 2, they are having the Bound for Glory pay-per-view in October in Japan.
Correct.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's good. I mean, Japan especially, they're only, I don't remember the hall's name, but it's a very, very famous Japanese wrestling hall, basically.
Kurokun Hall or something like that?
Kurokun or something like that. It's in the Tokyo Dome facility that they have there. Very famous, 70s and 80s. That was like the hotbed, was that hall. Only fits 2,000 people, which in Japan they're going to fill that fine, especially with the Wrestle One cross promotion that they're doing. I think it's a great move to get their audience base a lot, get a bigger audience base, especially out in Japan.
Well, they seem to do well when they do international shows like in England and everything like that. The attendance seems to be really good. So I think this is, we were talking again last week about the future of TNA. I think with this move, at least TNA gets picked up on an international basis. I'm sure that a lot of the Wrestle One wrestlers are going to be featured heavily.
Yeah.
Obviously, Muta isn't going to have something where TNA just comes in and wrestles. Japanese fans aren't quite used to the American style of wrestling.
I think they're getting used to it. Like, we talked about Bullet Club earlier. Those guys will come out and they'll hit you with a chair. That's like unheard of in Japanese wrestling. So they're getting to that point where they're doing that. They're kind of stealing a little bit of what WWE does, but they're still keeping that Japanese spirit in it. With this, it's going to be interesting to see, especially now that they brought the 6-sided ring back, how it's going to work with that whole dynamic again.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of wrestlers, past and present in TNA, complaining about the six-sided ring. I understand from a safety perspective, the ropes aren't straight. It isn't really a 90-degree kind of corner to jump off of. I get that, but it's what TNA started out with. It was something that made TNA different. Granted, they took it from AAA in Mexico, so it was a kind of a rip-off. But I think it's what separates it from other promotions. I get why they got rid of it, and people piss on Hogan because he come in and they wanted to go to a square ring.
Well, that square ring just shrunk, though, too.
Yeah.
Like, it went from a standard WWE ring, a 20x20, down to, like, a 10x10.
Right.
It's like, if you can't work a 20x20 ring, there's a problem.
Yeah. And I think, from the standpoint of TNA wanting to stand out and be different, I think the six-sided ring is something that's going to help them. I don't think it's a gimmick. Like I said, they started out with the six-sided ring, basically. Part ways. Well, not right away. They started out with the normal ring, but then eventually they went to the octagon kind of ring. Hey, I don't mind it.
I don't either. I actually voted for it just for the fact that it gives them a bigger ring and more space to do stuff. The only thing that's really weird with it is the tag matches are really cumbersome with a six-sided ring. Like, where are you going to stand? I'd prefer a larger four-sided ring, but that's not an option. So why not go for the gimmick, I guess?
Yeah, and I think, just from the perspective that a lot of the wrestlers were used to it before, so I don't see the complaining.
Yeah.
Granted, I've never stepped in either ring. Actually, I have to take pictures with Kurt Angle and Jeff Hardy before when they've come through our area, but, other than that, I've never wrestled in it, so I'm probably not the guy to give an opinion.
Yeah.
Two more TNA topics.
Oh, gosh, here we go.
Jim Ross made a blog post this week in regards to he felt that TNA and Ring of Honor should have a partnership. I go back to 2002 when some wrestlers from TNA were appearing, well, NWA TNA at the time, were appearing for Ring of Honor. Then they decided when Rob Feinstein got the soliciting the children, TNA pulled all of the wrestlers out. They started to have some kind of working relationship again. Then in 2007, TNA pulled all the wrestlers from Ring of Honor programming. Do you think a partnership between the two is beneficial? And what are your thoughts on that?
I don't think it's going to work. Honestly, we've seen it before, and you'll have it going for a while where you'll get, people going back and forth, and all of a sudden it stops. You don't see the big name ROH people jumping to TNA. You see the big name ROH people going to WWE.
Well, really, I think the only person that it can benefit is Ring of Honor. They don't have the national broadcast.
I don't think it does.
TV contract.
They do. Sinclair is huge. We've mentioned that before. They have 20 major markets.
They do, but you can't turn on USA or Spike TV and see Ring of Honor.
Well, no, that's because they're not a Sinclair-owned station. That's the problem, and we've talked about that before. But they're like on WGN, which is it's a fairly large station. Everyone has that in a basic cable package. It's just like up here, we just don't have Sinclair. That's the only thing.
I can understand that, but in my opinion, I think it would be very beneficial for Ring of Honor just for the fact that you get to see some of the wrestlers. They get somewhat of a more nationally based exposure. Granted, some of the wrestlers that are in Ring of Honor have, had that exposure before. They're from TNA, from WWE, but they also have their own homegrown talent. I think Ring of Honor is one of the best organizations as far as growing their own talent in-house. I think it's beneficial for Ring of Honor. Is it beneficial for TNA? No. TNA has their own homegrown wrestlers. They have some WWE cast-offs. I'll get into that in just 1 second. But they have a core of wrestlers already. I don't see... And then they have, the Japan connection with Wrestle One. I don't see it benefiting TNA at all.
ROH needs to stay on their own just for the fact that they have Sinclair backing them up, doing what they're doing. They have a lot of stuff going for them right now with some of their guys leaving for WWE. I know, going back to Jim Ross again, he did comment that he thought that if they had 2 or 3 more guys go to WWE, that basically 90% of the indie guys would be like, I want in that.
Right.
I want to do that
It's
because it's
almost
a jumping point.
It's almost as if Ring of Honor is like we talked about last week, NXT 2.0 in a way, because you don't see WWE pulling wrestlers from TNA at all.
Yeah, I would say NXT is basically what ROH was in 2005 and 2006, where you had CM Punk and Samoa Joe going at it. Except it's WWE owned and it has the production center and everything behind it. ROH, I think, just needs to stay put. If they do anything, they should really partner with Global Force.
They also had their first pay-per-view this weekend that, from what I read on forums, I didn't get a chance to watch it, but from what I've read, it seemed to be fairly successful.
Yeah, I haven't got a chance to watch it either, even though I really want to. Especially the title match, considering that Elgin finally won. It took him, I don't know how long to win, but he finally won. Yeah.
And then one of Kevin Steen's last Ring of Honor appearance. I think he had made a comment. He had about 90 days left on his Ring of Honor contract, and he was going to fulfill all of those dates.
Yep.
So, going into another TNA topic, we were talking about wrestlers jumping ship, wrestlers from other organizations. Last night at the TNA tapings, two former WWE wrestlers made their TNA debut. Snitsky and Ezekiel Jackson. Now, I know I'm reaching here, but there is a point. There is a point to this.
It's not baby punting.
No, it's not my fault. No, TNA historically, obviously Hogan, Nash, Hall, X-Pac, Kurt Angle, Christian, Hardys, etc., 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 has had the history of taking top WWE talent and bringing them over to TNA. Granted, a lot of those guys, when they were brought over, obviously Hogan is, especially Nash and Hall as well, far into the twilight of their careers.
Yeah.
Now it seems they're bringing in lesser-known names. Your Mike Knox, your Snitsky, your MVP, Ezekiel Jackson, and seemingly giving them a push. Do you think that that this is beneficial, bringing in some of the lower card WWE wrestlers? Because really, other than, Snitsky's catchphrases, MVP was a U.S. champion and a tag team
MVP
champion.
makes sense, though.
Yeah.
MVP was basically kicked into WWE, and he was working with Undertaker and Kane, in the first month he was there.
Right.
So
he was even tag champs with Matt Hardy for a while as well. But do you think there's an actual spot for WWE cast-offs like that on TNA's roster? Should they be working more on establishing in-house people? Because really, these are guys that have never really gotten their push in wrestling. No. I think, in my opinion, it's a smart move because it's a lower-level talent you could sign on the cheap.
Yep.
It does have some name recognition because they are from WWE. Mm-hmm. Granted, some of them, Ezekiel Jackson was supposed to be the guy, and obviously that never really panned out. No. I think it's really beneficial for TNA. They can really grow that talent, get that like we're talking like an Evan Bourne or a Drew McIntyre or somebody jumping to TNA.
Yeah.
I think it's really beneficial for TNA to add some of those wrestlers.
I don't see Snitsky and Ezekiel Jackson doing anything, but...
well, no, they seem to be working kind of as, the WWE has the authority. TNA kind of has the Dixie Carter kind of storyline going on, and they're coming in as
Dixie
kind
Carter
of being her minions.
Executive people. Mm-hmm. Gene Snitsky, that dude is so polarized at this point that I can't believe he's still getting work. You know what I mean? It's just... I wouldn't touch that man with a 10-foot pole. Ezekiel Jackson, everyone's going to be like, who? Yeah, so... that guy, you could maybe build Ezekiel Jackson into something. I don't think he's really working off much. I don't think he really got a lot of TV time anyway. So
TNA even has Bobby Lashley, former ECW or WECW or whatever people want to call it. They have them as their world champion right now.
Really?
Yeah, and I think that's also another beneficial thing because Lashley got pushed there for a while. He was in a main event program with Cena for the world title. And I think a lot of it was his mic skill.
Yeah,
he had a big, gigantic head, and he talked like Mickey Mouse. He talked like a 5-year-old. So that was pretty terrible. I think his in-ring work isn't too bad. And I honestly think in my opinion, good. Bring on some of these lower card WWE wrestlers that get cut or get fired or released. Push them to the max.
I think it's good, but then you get to a point where you're oversaturated with WWE wrestlers, which they're getting to a point where that's happening.
I think myself right now, I think they have a good mix. Because you can't always have that ingrown talent, because if you have names that no one knows, who's necessarily going to watch? They're going to go back to square one again.
True, but how do you build someone then? That gets to be where the problem is that you keep getting all these guys in, and then eventually it's going to get to a point where, depending on the management, obviously, because we've seen that in WCW, let's bring all the big top name guys in the 80s in, and then
I think that's
the shit down their pants.
I think TNA has stepped away from that a bit. Yes, they brought in a lot of WWE wrestlers, but they're not bringing in the names, the big named wrestlers anymore. I mean, obviously they're not going to bring CM Punk in, because if he goes anywhere, he's going back to the E, because
there's no way that CM Punk would ever go to TNA.
But I mean, they did, where they brought in
anyway.
the Hogans, the Nashes, the Nasty Boys, all of that. They're bringing in that lower level talent. And like I said, I don't think it's a bad idea.
I can see it if you rebrand the guy. I'm going to go back to New Japan again. If you look at Luke Gallows, who is part of the Bullet Club tag team champs right now, he's working great.
And he was also in TNA.
He was also in WWE as Festus.
Yep.
I mean, how do you take a guy that is not there in the head as a character, and now he's doing this, and he looks perfectly fine.
Right,
I mean, that's believable to me.
That goes back to my point, though. He was doing the straight edge society thing with CM Punk. He gets released, was starting to become a serious character. Goes to TNA, joins Aces and Eights, is a believable character.
Yeah, that's fine if you
worker.
put him as a believable character. I don't want to see Gene Snitsky as this weird pervert baby punter.
Do you see someone like Luke Gallows going from Festus right to Japan to the Bullet Club thing like that?
I was surprised that happened.
Because I think
that just shows me how, stretched out and how well he can actually act.
I think a lot of it was he got that chance to shine in TNA. So that's why I think you bring in a lot of these wrestlers. They could grow. They could always go back to WWE. Who knows what could happen?
Yeah. I'll agree with you on that point. I just don't think that they need to grab every single reject that WWE has.
No, and I'm sure that they're perusing the roster of released wrestlers right now. Obviously, we talked about Drew McIntyre and maybe Brodus Clay or someone like that. But I think they've got a good mix right now. And I hate to say it because I said we'd never talk about them. I think the future, in comparison to a couple months ago, seems to have a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel for TNA. Granted, there's financial struggles.
Wrestling-wise, it does.
Yeah, wrestling-wise.
Not like promo-wise or anything like that. Just straight, match-wise, I can see
there's financial struggles. There also is financial struggles in the WWE. Big financial struggles.
Yeah.
Everybody's going through money problems right now. I think, like we discussed today, I think it's a good time for TNA to start shining. And I'm hoping they're able to do something with this. I mean, they just come off that good pay-per-view in Texas, Slammiversary. Mm-hmm. They said morale seems to be high as it's been recently anyway.
Well, the guys are actually getting paid. That really helps, too.
They're getting paid. The houses are good. There isn't a renewal of a TV deal with Spike, which is making people kind of nervous. But this Bound for Glory in Japan is going to be a huge thing.
Yeah.
And they've got the right mix of younger talent, older talent, and talent from other organizations and their homegrown talent.
I think where they really went right is when they decided to leave Florida for a while, get out of Full Sail or whatever the heck they were at, and go around and start doing shows in different cities again and touring again, because at the time there was a lot of old ex-WWE talent, like we were talking about, that lived in Florida that didn't want to go anywhere, so they were going to TNA. So I think that's really, really helping with a lot of things. That's getting their names out. I really wish they would have done this 5-6 years ago. I think they would have been a bigger competitor.
I don't think TNA was ever at Full Sail. They just kind of had their impact zone.
They had an impact zone.
Universal Studios.
Yeah, that's what it was. I knew it was in
Full
Orlando.
Sail's where NXT
Yeah, that's where NXT's at. Yep.
So kind of transitioning that now, being we just kind of brought up Full Sail NXT. One topic might not seem interesting to too many people, but was to me just based off of my love for the history of professional wrestling is Larry Sabisco has been training wrestlers and working with wrestlers in NXT.
Sir.
I like this a lot. He made a comment that there isn't many wrestlers, and some might think of this as cocky, but multiple 8-time AWA champion, worked in NWA, worked in WCW, a little bit the WWF, the feud with Bruno Sammartino, obviously. Yep. I think this is great, and I think when he makes the comment that there isn't that many wrestlers from his time left that can pass, that still can or want to pass off that information to other wrestlers, I think it's great. I think more wrestlers from that time period, especially with the mind like Sabisco has for the business,
totally.
Should really be helping out a lot of the younger guys.
To quote him, he said that he's passing down the Illuminati of the wrestling business, which is something that I think we need to keep around, especially since there isn't territories anymore. Zabisco, I think, is bringing a lot of positivity there, and he's bringing a lot of knowledge is the main thing. So
and
I'm glad that he actually is doing this, because he didn't have to at all.
Right. That's a guy that wrestled, in the AWA around guys like Nick Bockwinkel and other great minds, him and like Bobby Heenan. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if there's someone that can pass off all that information to the younger guys, kind of give them the rub, be my guest. He cut a hell of a promo, too. Was I thought, a great announcer in WCW.
Yeah, I liked him as an announcer in WCW. Chris Jericho doesn't like him as an announcer in WCW, but that's a whole different story, I guess.
Jericho, I don't think, liked WCW, period.
No.
And I think, that's a whole other sore subject for me, because he got his push in ECW in Japan, but he became a household name in WCW, whether he wants to admit it or not. That's a whole other story for another podcast. Maybe we'll do a topic or a podcast just based on WCW at some point. So we've pimped out the social media. We've talked about the week in wrestling. So let's just get right down to the main event of this evening.
Correct.
Money in the Bank. We've talked about it for weeks on end. Mm-hmm. The matches are set. We'll go ahead. We'll break down each match. We'll give you our predictions. We'll see who's got the better wrestling mind here. And we'll kind of go from there. So let's start it off with the undercard. You have Paige versus Naomi for the Divas Championship. Obviously, there's been some dissension now with, Brodus Clay being let go. They seem to want to be splitting the Funkadactyls apart, which makes sense. To me,
a lot of tension on Raw.
To me, it seems like Naomi is the face and Paige is the heel, which to me works. I don't see Paige and the way she looks as a face.
I think it's a face-face match, though. I mean, they're not really... Paige really isn't a heel. I mean, it doesn't really...
To me, she isn't really anything.
No.
She is vanilla, monotone. I don't... What is she? Is she a heel? Is she a face?
They haven't really given her time.
What is she?
They haven't really given her time on the mic either, but if you notice, her mic skills aren't that great. It's just her wrestling skills that are. Who's the other Funkadactyl? You have Naomi. What's the other one's name? We'll get back to it, but
we'll get back to that. I'm not sure offhand.
Those two, I wouldn't be surprised if the one runs in and gets the match, screws Naomi out of the title essentially, and then they start feuding.
Cameron,
that's who it is. Cameron coming in, breaking the match up, causing Paige to win via disqualification.
Well,
starting that feud up.
Like we talked last week, I think Paige, in a way, the way they're handling her is just a bit of a disappointment. Big debut after WrestleMania. You have her beat AJ Lee, was Divas champion almost a year, like 283 days or something like that. I might be wrong on that, but around that 280 mark.
Correct.
Then what do you do with her? Nothing.
I think that boils down to creative, not knowing what to do with divas in general. More than anything else.
I understand she's got the wrestling background. She's been wrestling, since she was 12, like we talked about last week.
She's supposed to be feuding with AJ Lee, and yet AJ Lee is gone on an extended
We've
break.
Probably even seen the last of AJ Lee by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
Just based on the reports this week that she's the possibility of her being pregnant.
Yeah. Which may or may not be true. Who knows?
But I mean,
marrying Punk and all that stuff. So I don't know if they just had an extended period of time with AJ or what. But They should have had her feud with AJ.
Yeah, it was a really piss poor way of just handling it. And now you go to... She can't talk at the mic. WWE, you gotta cut a promo. It's entertainment. You're not going to get away from not talking unless you're Brock Lesnar and have a mouthpiece like Heyman.
Yeah, they'll never do that with her.
I don't see it. A great wrestler, but I just don't see it. I don't see her as a long-term WWE star. I could see her as someone who goes to the Knockouts division. But then again...
We've talked about that before with Knockouts, though. All those girls can cut a promo well.
But to her credit, I will give her this. Natalya, she's doing whatever, NXT fodder, jobber to the stars, whatever.
Which she shouldn't be doing.
No, Charlotte, she's NXT, they're not going to move her up yet. You don't have, like we talked about last week, you don't have a Trish Stratus, you don't have a Lita, you don't have a Beth Phoenix,
no.
Tamina Snuka is hurt. Layla, she's probably one of the only other wrestlers on the roster that can act, female wrestler that can wrestle.
Emma
can
wrestle.
And they're using her as a comedy act. Summer Rae can wrestle, but they're using her as the BFFs in NXT and in the Fandango Layla love triangle. What are they doing?
The Divas division is a complete mess. I think that the only reason that it's around is because Stephanie McMahon loves women wrestling, which, to be honest, great women wrestling is great wrestling.
Right.
That's all there is to it. But you have to have people in this industry that can speak on the mic, and you have to have people that can actually wrestle too. And honestly, I don't know why they don't have Natty Neidhart wrestling week in and week out with Paige.
I have no idea.
I don't understand why she doesn't do that.
Honestly, in my opinion, her whole career in the WWE has been a waste. You've had her where she's had the gimmicks, where she farts backstage. I mean, come on. The pedigree the background that she comes from, what a waste.
It is a true waste of space, and I think it's probably because she clinged on to that Total Divas thing, and that's where she knows her place is. But it's like, you're in this business to win a title. That's your top.
Right.
So that's what needs to be taken care of.
So then, with that being said, final prediction for this match.
I'm going to go with Naomi via disqualification.
Fair enough. I think when I look at it, they're just bringing Naomi in as a character now, other than a Funkadactyl.
Yep.
I think her time will come. She will hold the Divas title.
Well,
probably be the one that succeeds Paige.
Naomi's the only person that's beat Paige. Yeah. Remember that. So
I don't see Paige losing.
I don't either.
This pay-per-view.
I don't see it.
We have Battleground, I think is the next pay-per-view, and then SummerSlam.
Correct.
I could see it at one of the next two, maybe on Raw, but I'm going to go with Paige on this one.
Okay.
So, match number 2, another Divas match. We have Layla versus Summer Rae with Fandango as the special guest referee.
Ooh, shenanigans.
As we've been seeing the past couple of weeks or months, Fandango had broken up with Summer Rae in order to be with Layla. Now there seems to be a love triangle. You see scenes where Summer Rae dumped a bunch of milk on Layla's head.
Yep.
Very PG, by the way. And Summer Rae has laid a couple lip locks on Fandango. Instead of pulling away, he seems to embrace it. So, what do you see in this match, Justin?
Ugh. A match that I don't want to watch.
We're finding it hard to commentate a little bit under this undercard. This is a very top-heavy card.
Yep.
But the undercard is...
I mean, there's some great matches coming up, to be honest. But this one is just clearly a fluff piece that it's just going to be in between probably the two ladder matches, just for something to cleanse the palate quick.
For bathroom break?
Yeah, the bathroom break match. I'm going to say Summer Rae does it just for the fact that we haven't really seen too much of her. She's supposed to be the face. I think they'll give it to the face at this point, which would be Summer Rae.
Yeah, and I think when I look at this too, I mean, after giving Fandango the big debut, beating Chris Jericho, not WrestleMania 30, but WrestleMania 29.
29, correct.
They haven't done anything with him. I mean, no title run, no nothing. I think this is just a filler match, like you said. I'm going to go with Summer Rae, just for the fact that I think her and Fandango will reunite.
Yeah.
And then Layla will actually maybe hopefully go on and wrestle, because she can wrestle. So God willing, that's what happens. So then we go to the tag team match, or one of the tag team matches featured. Ryback versus Gold Star. No longer the Brotherhood, now Gold Star. What are your feelings on this match?
I really like Stardust. I don't know why. It's weird. They had a great little promo thing that they did on Raw where Goldust was being weird Goldust and Stardust came in with a bunch of lights and stuff, and I really like that team. I think they're gonna get the win.
I really think that Ryback's grown on me. I know they had...
I like them as a team. I think they work really well as a team.
They had Curtis Axel be the Paul Heyman guy, along with Ryback. Ryback had his push, kind of before that, when he was
feuding
undefeated
against
streak
Cena for a while.
Feuding against Cena and Punk. Then they just kind of, fell apart. But I really like them as a tag team. They're really growing on me. I think that they really could probably get a tag team title run out of them. But, yes, going to the fact that you go through Cody Rhodes and Goldust having their issues, losing matches, Cody Rhodes saying you need to find a new partner, and then he reinvents himself in the Stardust, excuse me. I can't see them losing now. I see them going on a winning streak and possibly being contenders for the tag title. Will they get it back? I don't know, but I'm going to go with Gold Star on this one. Any final thoughts on that match, Justin?
I'm just excited to see what happens. Hopefully they do another one of those cheesy Goldust promos, because I was always just a big mark for Goldust.
I'm sure there's going to be some kind of backstage promo that they're going to have that's just going to be hilarious.
Goldust biting at somebody at some point.
So, just to kind of throw this off a bit before we get into the rest of the match predictions, Daniel Bryan is going to be making an appearance at the pay-per-view. I haven't really seen if it's going to be via satellite or if he's actually going to be at the pre-show or at the pay-per-view. Not necessarily, we won't count this on our predictions. What do you think he's going to have to say?
I don't know. He'll probably just kind of go over what it felt like to lose the title and all this other junk that you kind of go through when get stripped of a title because of an injury. I'd like to see him on the pre-show doing the commentary with them. Honestly, I'd like to see him maybe on SmackDown commentary until he heals up or something.
Well, they
just
did do
give
that.
him something to do.
We talked about that earlier. They did that with CM Punk when he was hurt.
Yep.
Could you see Daniel Bryan doing commentary on the main event and somewhat interfering, maybe causing Orton the win?
Maybe. I mean, I don't know if they're going to allow him to do much with his neck.
Well, it wouldn't take much for him to push somebody off a ladder either.
No, it wouldn't, but...
Or distract them.
Would that go against doctor's orders, therefore making him wait longer at that point?
Well,
I mean, I don't really know
how that works. At this point, we haven't
works.
really heard for sure what the status is of his neck is. How long is he going to be out, etc.
Again, I was listening to JR's podcast again, and I'm sorry if we overquote JR's podcast, but it's a very insightful thing.
We do listen to a few wrestling podcasts.
Yep. He was basically saying, especially with, Chris Benoit's neck injury, they were going to let him take a whole year off and all this stuff.
Right.
You let a guy go until it's healed. That's the main thing, especially with a neck injury, because at that point...
They're going to end up like Edge.
Yeah, exactly. You'll end up like Edge, where he takes the one neck surgery that'll get him going quicker, but then he's got to redo it again, 2 years later.
And now can't wrestle at all.
Exactly. So that's... What you're going to see with Daniel Bryan is you're going to see him out for a very long time.
I think he's going to come out and kind of talk about everything. I think they may swerve us a bit and say that he will be back at SummerSlam, or he will consider himself the number one contender.
Mm-hmm.
There might be a swerve there. That's kind of what I think I'm going to go with.
Have to see.
So that brings us to Big E versus Rusev. Another match that I consider filler. What do you have in this one? Rusev, and why?
Rusev because just the whole gimmick. They're really pushing him as a monster. I can't see him losing to Big E. I'm sure that you're going to see a bunch of spots, bunch of really crazy high spots that they're going to attempt to do to win over the crowd and everything, but it's going to be a short and sweet match, and you're going to see Rusev win again.
Well, I think I'll go with Rusev as well, just for the fact that it seems, if I'm not mistaken, he is undefeated, correct?
Correct. Outside of, I mean, they're not counting, like, Rumble matches, I guess, because he lost that.
It doesn't do anything for Big E to beat Rusev.
No.
The only one that has anything to gain here is Rusev winning.
Exactly.
So that's what I'm going to go with. I'm going to go with Rusev on that one. Sorry that we haven't commentated too much on this undercard. I'm not a big fan of the undercard. I'm honestly, as I was explaining to Justin, not a fan of this pay-per-view, period. I think all of the matches, including the ladder matches, are weak. Justin is fairly excited for this pay-per-view. I on the other hand, not so much.
But I like a lot of the matches in the undercard, too. I mean, a few matches in the undercard anyway, not all of them, but...
So that brings us to the tag team title match, the Usos versus Eric Rowan and Luke Harper, otherwise the Wyatt family. Who do you have with this one?
I'm a Wyatt family mark, like no one's business. I've liked them ever since they started in NXT as the Wyatt family, so I'm going to have to go with them for the win at this point.
Clean win, winning the titles?
Never a clean win with the Wyatt family. Some shenanigans are going to happen with that.
But do you think they'll win the titles?
Yeah, I think they'll win the titles. They've deserved it at this point. They always lose, but it's like a heels loss, so it doesn't really hurt them a lot. So... they need a clean win and they need a title run. It's just like the Shield at this point.
I'm going to go with the Usos on this one.
Okay.
And here's why. With Bray Wyatt seemingly being a singles star, so to speak now, there isn't anything else for the Wyatts, for Harper and Rowan's right now, for as far as challengers if they want a tag team title. Will they win the title? Yes. This is another instance, like I said earlier with the Paige Naomi. I think they'll be tag team champions. They'll extend this feud a couple of months.
Yeah.
Maybe Battleground or SummerSlam or a Raw. Tag team title's a good switch for Raw. Mm-hmm. I think maybe even the next night they'll wrestle the Usos on Raw and then win the tag team titles. But I'm going to go Usos on this one. Just because they've had one of the lengthier title reigns in a while. And I just can't see them taking the titles off of them right now. I could see the feuding for a while just until they figure out something for Bray Wyatt.
Yeah, and you have to look at like other guys too that are coming up, like the Ascension too. I think it'd be a better feud with the Wyatts for the Ascension than it would be with the
I agree
Usos,
fully.
So.
We were talking about that last week, but I don't think they're going to go with the heel feud right away.
I'll have to see.
So just recapping where we're at this point, Justin has Naomi via DQ, Summer Rae, Gold Star, Rusev, and the Wyatts, and I have Paige, Summer Rae, Gold Star, Rusev, and the Usos. So we're buried on a couple of matches. That leaves us with the two main matches of the evening:
Sir.
the Money in the Bank match and the Money in the Bank match for the world title.
Yep.
So our participants have been finalized for the Money in the Bank match, or so we think right now. We have Kofi Kingston, RVD, Dolph Ziggler, Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins, Jack Swagger, and right now Wade Barrett. During the SmackDown tapings on Tuesday, it was heard that he had separated his shoulder, which is legit.
Yeah,
it hasn't been a determination if he's going to wrestle at the pay-per-view or not. So he was kind of one of the, I guess, in reading a few articles, the favorite in this match. I don't see it being he's Intercontinental Champion, but...
you never know.
Do you think... First of all, let's go with this. Do you think Wade Barrett will wrestle in this match? If yes, what do you think his level of competitiveness will be? If no, do you think they will replace him, and who do you think they will replace him with?
If Wade Barrett was healthy in this match, I would say Wade Barrett would probably win, just due to the fact that Ambrose and Rollins would kick each other out, continuing the feud that they have. And Wade Barrett, Triple H has said it on national television, he loves the gimmick.
Right.
So giving him that belt puts Wade Barrett in the spotlight. Or giving him the briefcase and then getting the belt puts Wade Barrett in the spotlight, for which he's been, screwed out of because of injuries before. I feel really, really, really bad for the guy, to be honest with you. This is the second or third heavyweight title shot that he's lost.
This was the push for him.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think he wrestles. It sounded like it was a really bad separated shoulder caused by Jack Swagger pushing him into the barrier. Do
you think that they'll add a seventh wrestler, or will they just go with these six?
I think they'll add somebody. I don't know if The Miz is going to make his surprise appearance. I think it would be interesting if they did do something like that. I mean, you could pull like someone like Mark Henry out of the woodwork maybe, and chuck him in there.
Big Show even.
I think Big Show. I don't think they're going to do that, but Henry's believable. I mean, we talked about that before when we were kind of going over the just the setup for the Money in the Bank match in general.
Well, I think you could go a couple different options here. I don't think he'll wrestle, obviously.
No.
Most likely they'll add somebody at some point in time. You could do Christian, who's been gone for a while. Miz, maybe even Rey Mysterio. Yeah. Mark Henry, the Big Show. They will add someone. They won't go with 6.
No. It has to be 7.
So, let's break down each wrestler here quickly. Given a, let's say, likely or highly unlikely, what are the chances of these wrestlers winning? What do you think Kofi Kingston's chances are in this match?
Highly unlikely. He hasn't had a decent push in a very, very long time. He's a great, individual. I don't know. I don't see it with him.
He's good for a spot or two in this match.
Yeah, he's like Shelton Benjamin was. I mean, the dude is all right on the mic and stuff, but he does so much work outside of the ring that WWE keeps him around.
What about RVD?
No. RVD's just there to put someone over.
You think he's just there for the high spots as well? So that brings us to, we'll go with Jack Swagger. It's been a while since he's had a title run.
I could see it happening. It's been over a year since his weed issue that he had where he got a weed DUI.
And the thing, when I look at it here too, is the WWE has gone with a lot of obvious finishes lately.
Yeah.
Bryan walking away with the title at WrestleMania.
Yep.
They could swerve us here. It could be a Swagger.
And I mean, if you look at, was it last year where Cody Rhodes won? So that was kind of a swerve.
Sandow won the other one.
Yep. That was kind of a swerve. I mean,
yep.
Actually, no, it was Sandow that won because he pushed Cody Rhodes off the ladder.
Yeah, you're right, because they were partners. You're right.
So yeah, and that kind of blew up in his face, which kind of sucks because I like Damien Sandow. I think he was a good character.
What about Ziggy?
You keep hearing that the injury concern is keeping him from doing anything.
We hear a lot about the concussion thing. He's obviously must be a name that's in contention here. Why even have him in it?
Well, yeah, exactly. And I mean, he even came out to wrestle Rollins 2 weeks ago, and he said straight out that, Triple H is burying him, essentially, is what he said. Mm-hmm. So
he was in the doghouse a while back for making those comments, discouraging comments about Randy Orton.
Yeah, well, I don't really blame him for that, but I could see him actually winning it. I mean, I think Dolph deserves a run. He's good on the mic. He's great at bumping. He can do whatever he needs to do. He's great at what he does. I could see it.
What about Ambrose or Rollins?
Highly. High. Out of everybody in this match, one of those two would probably win it. Well, probably Rollins, to be honest.
When I look at this match in comparison to the world title match, this is the most unpredictable match of the two. In fact, on the card, you could conceivably make the case for all of them. Obviously, Kofi, no. RVD, no. I can't see.
Which, if you look back at last year's, it was the same thing for the heavyweight title. That was so unpredictable. You had no clue who was going to win that. In which, when Sandow won it, it was like, oh my god, they're actually going to push him, for Christ's sake.
So, let's just go with this then. Considering that Barrett is in, and he's a part of this match, and considering they don't add anybody, who do you feel wins this match, and why? You have to pick one. You can't pick either.
We can't assume that Barrett's in, though, because he's not going to be in.
Well, that's the card at this point, though. They haven't said he's in. They haven't said he's out.
All these hard choices.
Based on who we have, they have officially announced. You have to make a pick here. You can't pick Seth Rollins or possibly Dean Ambrose. If you're going to pick, you have to pick one. I'm making this hard on you. I know. I can just see you over there. The wheels are spinning.
Yeah, I'm foaming at the mouth here because Wade Barrett was supposed to win this. I'm going to go with Rollins. Just for the fact that he's Triple H's golden boy at this point. I think he's going to get a run as a heel and then kind of feud.
Feud with?
We'll get to that.
We'll get to that in a bit. I'm looking at this. I'm having a hard time with this one.
Extremely hard.
Rollins makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Ambrose makes sense. I feel a swerve in this one.
My gut says Rollins. My head says that they're going to swerve us, and Ambrose and Rollins are going to take each other out.
For me, and this one's going to be out there, I'm going to go with Ziggler. Just for the fact there's been a lot of talk lately just about him and Ric Flair and him having the injury bug and him turning him down. There's a lot of talk. There's a reason behind that talk, I think. I think that he's going to get a push. It's his time again to get a push. The Shield doesn't need... Right now, having a world title shot, they don't need that right now.
No.
They can get that down the road. They need to resolve their issues with the Authority, with each other, and move on before we go to some title matches. I think Ziggler is the one here that makes the most sense. I would have went with Barrett, but with the injury, I don't see it.
With
RVD,
the card as it is right now, you can't put Wade Barrett in there just for the fact that he injured his shoulder.
No, and
if he didn't, I bet we would both go Wade Barrett.
Right, and RVD's time has come and passed.
He's not there.
No.
All the time anymore.
I mean, I would have loved it had he had a longer world title reign when he had his title reign.
He smoked that away.
Can't get off the dope, but Kofi, no, he's ne's had a real good singles run. Maybe Intercontinental title.
He had a few Intercontinental title reigns that were all right,
but he's not World Championship material. So
they never give any of these guys mic time to really show you what they're for.
And Ziggler
the problem,
wrestle, and he can speak.
The only problem with Ziggler is what has he done for me lately? That's what it comes down to. There's no TV time in the last 6 months for Dolph Ziggler.
That's why I'm thinking swerve here, as I think that he's going to win it. Then they're just going to have him pimp him out on TV weekly.
Yeah.
So, that brings us to the main event of the evening, the ladder match for the vacant World Heavyweight Championship. In that match, we have Kane, Cena, Orton, Reigns, Del Rio, Cesaro, Sheamus, and Bray Wyatt. This one, I have my obvious pick.
Yeah.
And I have my not so obvious pick. So, Justin, what do you think of this match?
I like it a lot. I think it's going to be really interesting. There's a lot of guys there that are on the cusp of main event, that with this, they're going to get that jump, whoever wins. Hopefully it's not a predictable win, like we've had before with a Cena or an Orton going in and winning.
One thing I want to point out before we get into our full analysis and breakdown and prediction here, there was the leaked SummerSlam poster of Brock Lesnar and John Cena on Amazon for the DVD cover, which has now been pulled. Do you think that's a spoiler?
I hope it's not. I could see those two going at it without the title, but Brock Lesnar deserves a title.
There has been talk since he beat the streak that come SummerSlam, Lesnar was going to win the world title.
I could see it. He deserves it, but that means that he has to travel every week with the damn thing and come out and have Paul Heyman do stuff with him. But
going back to the other match, do you see him replacing Wade Barrett?
Ooh.
I mean, we never...
That's something that we never thought about, really.
It makes sense on the level that it's a surprise.
But you see Brock Lesnar going in there, you know he's going to win.
He's going to win it.
There's no way he doesn't win.
Well, no, but then at that point, it just comes to the point, when does he cash it in and who against? I mean, granted, saving it for SummerSlam.
That is actually a really good idea, because if you think about it, he's a part-time guy, but he's a full-time guy at the same time. So, he isn't there every Monday, but you have Paul Heyman there pimping out that he has this briefcase. Mm-hmm. Now, he doesn't have to be there at all until Heyman says, my client is going to be cashing in his money in the bank.
Kind of like he's done every week with Cesaro and talking about the streak.
Exactly. So, that's an interesting concept, and if that is the case...
You can't change your pick now.
I know we can't change our pick at all, but if that is the case, if you see Brock Lesnar in that match...
Oh, he's going to win it.
He's going to win it. There's no way in hell he's not.
He won't. So, going with the main event, and not to get too far off track, who do you see winning this match?
Why don't we go? Why don't we go like we did at the last one, and hot cold,
kind of break it down.
Yeah.
Well, let's go with Kane then. He was the recent addition here last week.
Kane, I could see he's probably going to put people over a little bit more than anything else. He was supposed to, if Bryan was good, he was supposed to take the title off of Bryan.
Right.
So I think he has a legitimate, like an actual legitimate
I could
shot.
see the legitimacy of him winning it. I think he's kind of the Ziggler of the
group.
The group. Because from the standpoint of he's a member of the Authority, it makes sense. Go out there, beat people up, get your title shot, and then maybe he wins the title. Triple H takes it away from him, gives it to somebody else.
Maybe, who knows?
Maybe they keep him with the corporate Kane gimmick. Maybe he wears the mask. I think there is some legit chance that Kane gets one more title run in his career.
I'd like Kane to actually have a title run that lasts more than a day. I mean, he's had a couple that have lasted like a month or two, which is fine and all, but I think the character itself has one more run in it, and I really hope that they have him go maybe to SummerSlam with that. Maybe they have, John Cena, like the poster had John Cena and Brock Lesnar with just that, super match that they need to have on SummerSlam, because that's one of the big 4 pay-per-views.
What about Sheamus?
No.
Not at all.
U.S. title holder, I don't see it happening. Very, very cold.
I guess, like I said, he is the workout buddy of Triple H. I think out of all the competitors in this match, he has the least likely chance to win it.
Yeah, and I mean, Sheamus is a good dude and everything, but
I don't
see the marketability of him at this point.
So then, with those two out of the way, let's go with Del Rio. I think he's almost the Ziggler of this group too.
There's a good chance. I mean, he's sly enough where he could maybe weasel his way into it.
Right.
I'd like to see what he does, and I'm not a giant Del Rio hater by any stretch of the imagination. But I mean, I didn't really watch a lot of his stuff too much.
I wasn't a fan of his, his previous title reigns or anything like that.
As long as he's a heel and he's like the Mexican aristocrat, D-bag, I'm perfectly fine with him being a title holder for a while.
Yeah, I don't see it from the standpoint. I just don't like him as a wrestler.
Yeah,
his contract is expiring soon, which we've heard, and he's expressed interest that he wanted to leave. Maybe
this is the bump that gets him to stay for a while.
Maybe
to
this
keep
gets
that
to stay because the
contingent, like we
they
talked
have the
about.
tendency to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Dangle the carrot in front of you, grab that brass ring, like Vince McMahon says.
Correct.
I could see it out of the group of Kane, Sheamus, and Del Rio. Del Rio's the most likely
out of that
of the
small
3.
group. Yes.
So then let's go with Cesaro. This one's a tricky one.
I'd like to see him in the scenario that we previously said of Brock Lesnar winning the case. I'd like to see Cesaro win the title, and then you'd have that weird like clash between the two Paul Heyman guys, and then you'd have Cesaro going on his own, being a face.
Right. But then I think at that point he's a transitional champion. He loses to Lesnar at SummerSlam, which to me, in a way, hurts him.
Yeah.
In my opinion. I think when it's time for Cesaro to win the title, he needs to have a lengthy reign to solidify himself as a champion. Like Bryan, had he have kept, not gotten hurt, I think that he would have kept the belt all the way from WrestleMania to SummerSlam, which, in theory, a 3-month, 4-month, 5-month, SummerSlam's in August.
Yeah, it's not that long. Reign. But in WWE now, that is a long time.
Well, it's not like a Hogan 3-year or San Martino 8-year title run.
I mean, the CM Punk year in, a few months. That's huge.
That's the longest we're going to see in probably in our lifetime.
Probably.
So, you say his chances are fairly decent then?
Yeah, I mean, they're up there with Del Rio.
I'm going to go... In my heart, I want him to win this.
He's not going to win it, but I mean, there's always a possibility. I mean, we're talking about the WWE. You can swerve anytime.
He's the one like you had in your match. In my heart, yes, I want Cesaro to win. No, he won't. They're not ready for it yet.
No.
He may be the guy after SummerSlam that feuds with Lesnar that takes the title.
Gets it to about Survivor Series and then goes.
Right.
Yeah, I could see that.
Because you're going to have somebody beat Lesnar at some point, unless
Correct.
he's in it for the long haul, which we don't know.
Yeah.
That brings us to Bray Wyatt. I think this is probably one that in your heart.
Oh, I'm a total Bray Wyatt mark, and I think he's earned a shot. But we also have Super Cena in this match too, so
I don't think it's Wyatt's time yet either.
my heart says Wyatt. My brain says no, just for the fact that he needs to kind of build a little bit more first. But then at that point, who's Wyatt going to feud with? I mean, what's he going to do?
Yeah, I mean,
Hopefully they figure something out.
he's not going to go back to feuding with Cena, and I don't think he'll feud with the Authority.
No.
Unless they tease something there, which is a possibility.
I mean, unless the Authority kind of pisses him off in some way, shape, or form, and then they, bring Wyatt down, to their level. I could see him maybe feuding with Kane, because they did that a little bit before, but, yeah, I like Bray Wyatt's chances in this. I think he'll put on a good show, but I don't think he'll win.
What about Roman Reigns?
Yes.
I think he is got to be heavily favored. I don't think he's going to be my pick.
I
think he's heavily favored.
They went out Monday night with him spearing Kane. Normally, when they do that, that's your top
sign of things to come.
That is your top face in the match.
I think he's another guy. His time will come. I don't think it's now, but his time will come.
Imagine that match: Brock Lesnar versus
Roman
Reigns.
That could be a hell of a match. Two big guys. It's just like the old days of wrestling.
Old days.
Heel, face, big guys just clashing.
Yep.
So let's go with Randy Orton.
Another high. Even though no one wants it.
No one wants it. People are sick of Orton, but he's reliable.
He is. Never injured.
He has, a little bit of the smoking the ganja and whatever else he does. He's had his wellness violations.
He has wellness problems, but reliable as hell. I mean, Orton, good promo cutter, like we've said before. He's like Paul Heyman. He can just get under your skin and piss you off.
Yeah. He's a great heel champion.
Yeah, he was, because he's like that in real life, so...
I think, transitionally, you have the Authority strip the title from Bryan. Orton was the champ.
Yep.
It makes sense to give him, another run.
I don't think he's going to win out of this one. I think we've had too much evolution and too much Randy Orton and Triple H the last 3 or 4 months here, so...
That leaves us with John Cena.
Ooh, Super Cena.
From the standpoint of he is the most reliable guy in this bunch. He is the biggest face of this bunch. He would be the biggest name to face a Lesnar at SummerSlam. It makes sense. From the standpoint of he's had how many runs? What's there left for him to do?
At 14 title runs right now?
Including... It's up there.
I think it's 11, normal title runs, normal WWE Championship runs, and then I think he had 3 World Heavyweight.
It is up there.
So, if he got this would be his 15th and his first World Heavyweight Championship. But, I don't see... The way that they went out on Raw, I do not see him winning.
So, with that being said, we've kind of broken down what we think is kind of the probabilities of each wrestler winning. Who walks out with the World Heavyweight Championship?
Reigns.
And why?
The way that they ended Raw.
The way they ended Raw.
There's no way. If you would have had... Because the way that they did that is they had Kane wreck everybody. So Kane is your top heel in that match. And then you had Roman Reigns finish him off with the spear and basically say F you Triple H with his face. So... Unless the Authority screws him out somehow, I'm going to go with Reigns.
I'm going to go with the obvious pick here. I'm going to go with Cena.
Super Cena.
Do I want it? No. But it makes sense from the standpoint of he is good fodder for the Authority to feud with. He's good fodder for Brock Lesnar to feud with.
Yeah.
I could see this being an instance where Cena wins the title. They come out on Raw. The Authority. Cena... Follow the company line, become a member of us, wear the suit, wear the tie. Cena says no. Triple H says fine. They go get Brock Lesnar. They wrestle at SummerSlam. It's a transitional enough champion where he can lose it to Lesnar
Yeah.
and it not hurt Cena's legacy at all. Where if you have a Reigns, you have a Cesaro, you have a Wyatt win, and then lose in a couple of months to SummerSlam, what they've done to build those three wrestlers would be ruined in a matter of minutes.
I mean, maybe they're just going for the screw job on Reigns. So he gets to the precipice just about, grabbing for the title, and Triple H comes out and screws him out of the title. And then you have Randy Orton go up and get it. Or
you could also have Rollins screw him out of the belt in this one as well.
Exactly, but I mean, him and Ambrose are rumored to be feuding until the next pay-per-view.
Right.
At that point, you could probably have Super Cena come in and, F you or, attitude adjust the Triple H and then kick Orton out of there, because odds are Orton's going to be climbing at that point. And then win it. I mean, all is plausible. I really hope, just for the fact that they've built him up ever since they broke out the Shield, I really hope they put it on him. And hopefully it's not a transition. Hopefully, he's not going to lay down for Brock Lesnar. There was talks of Reigns going over at WrestleMania as well to put him over and make him that mega face.
That's kind of my feeling. I think it's going to be a while yet, because whoever wins this is laying down for Lesnar.
Yeah.
We know that already. I think with the cover leaked, that doesn't really, I was going to go with Cena regardless. I did allude to the fact last week that Cena was probably going to add another title reign here. And
I'm just going to go, I'm going to be the mark, and I'm going to keep my pick just because that's what I want.
Right.
My head now, we've talked about it, Cena's probably going to win, but the way that they've pushed Reigns at this point, it makes sense for him to either A, get screwed out of the title, or B, get the title and then have him feud with the Authority. Yeah, job to Lesnar at some point with Triple H screwing him.
I think the job to Lesnar honestly would hurt Reigns. Like I said, when one of these guys has to have a title reign, when Rollins, Ambrose, Reigns, Wyatt, Cesaro, when one of them has a title reign, it has to be a lengthy one to solidify them as the guy in the federation or in entertainment or whatever you want to call it. I don't think losing to Brock Lesnar is going to benefit anybody. If you would have had someone like Reigns, say, beat the Streak at WrestleMania, then yes, now would be the time for him to win. But you can't have something as big as Lesnar beating the Streak and then go out at SummerSlam and then job to Roman Reigns. It's not going to happen.
No, that would never happen. And I don't know if Brock Lesnar necessarily wants to be... I mean, he wants to be champion, obviously. Who doesn't want to be champion?
He did cut those promos that he wanted to be world champion. Just like The Rock did. He was going to go to Royal Rumble. He was going to be the number one contender there.
Yep.
And he won the belt. So giving Lesnar a title reign, even as a part-timer, like you said, Heyman could come out. Here's the briefcase, my client. Well,
why don't you just do that at SummerSlam then? Why don't you give him the Money in the Bank contract? Have Brock Lesnar get the Money in the Bank contract. Roman Reigns versus John Cena happens at SummerSlam. The Authority sends Brock Lesnar out, screws whoever is that they need to screw in that match, preferably Roman Reigns, out of the title, and then you have Roman Reigns and the Authority feuding.
Why I think they won't do that, it's a good theory, a good scenario in theory, but why I think they won't do that, Lesnar doesn't need the Money in the Bank to be a legitimate title contender. No. He beat the most important, historical figure, I guess you could say, in WrestleMania history. Even probably more so than Hogan.
Correct.
He doesn't need that Money in the Bank briefcase.
No.
So he'll go to SummerSlam, and he will wrestle Cena. Cena will lay down for Lesnar, and that will be that.
Maybe I'm just one of those people that I never want to see another John Cena title reign ever again.
I don't want to see it either. Don't get me wrong, listeners. I'm not a Cena mark. I don't like Cena. I think, he has his place, and I did say he is part of the future of wrestling last week. He has his place. He is still on the younger side, and I don't want to see it. But
it's too boring.
The logic makes sense to me that Cena wins.
It does, and I'm just going to stick with my heart on this one, and that's where it led me. So we'll stick with that, and we'll go from there and see what happens.
So, folks, that ends episode 4 of the Countout Podcast. Just a thank you to some of the listeners that we have had out there and some of the comments we have had on videos. We do appreciate everyone that listens to the show. Even those that don't comment or aren't subscribed, we do see that we do have some listeners out there that have been listening to the show. Always we encourage interaction. Don't be afraid to send a message, a post, anything, a tweet. We're all over the place, and you could post anywhere, and we're gonna see it.
Yeah, and we love answering questions. So if you guys have anything that you want us to talk about, anything that you can think of, any kind of scenarios that you want us to go through and say, hey, this is good, hey, this is bad.
Even if you wanted to cover some fantasy booking scenario, book your all-time, what would be your greatest pay-per-view, who would you book, etc. Something like that. If you wanted to do that, gladly go ahead and do so. I mean, we're here talking shop about wrestling, basically, as we do every week. And like I said, we're not going anywhere anytime soon. We've been at it for a month. You'll see us here in 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, and 6 months. So, we'd like to have that interaction. Even if at some point in time we discuss doing some call-ins, we'll see if we get to that point, we'll gladly do so.
Yeah, and interaction really keeps us going, too. It keeps us on our toes. So anything that you guys have, any comments or anything, really helps us.
So on that note, we'll be back next week covering the results of the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. For Justin Williams, I am Jason Shepeltowski, and thank you for joining us for episode 4 of the Countout Podcast.
Thank you all.